and welcome to a brand new episode of the Raising Musos podcast, your podcast to learn more about music education so that you can make better and more informed decisions on how to help your child who's learning music. That's a little bit of a mouthful. My name is Eliza Bourgault, and I actually run a music school called Music Makers Academy in Joondalup, which is in Western Australia. And I started this podcast at the beginning of the year as I noticed that so many of my students' parents seem to really just lack knowledge and insight on how to help their child with music and things like that. And, we publish an episode every single week. So I believe, if my counting is right, this is the 28th episode of this podcast, which is really exciting. Some of the topics that I've talked about in the past are, how to look for a teacher, what to look for in a music teacher, what to expect from lessons. I talk a lot about practice. And just recently, I actually invited my flute tutor to do a mini series on flute lessons. So if you have been thinking about learning flute, I highly recommend you listen to the last 4 episodes of this podcast to learn more about what learning the flute is like. I thought it was such an interesting series. I was really good at preparing the questions, but finding out all the answers to those questions was really interesting. It just made me realize how little I know about other instruments. And so I thought, for me, I just definitely got a lot out of talking to Jensen. And if you listen to those episodes, I hope you got something out of them as well. Now, the topic for today is, it's again, sort of like a mini series, but this time it's only 2 episodes. And so today's episode is like the first part, and it's based on a blog post that I wrote, a couple of years ago now. I lose track of time very easily, so it could have been last year or the year before. But the blog post was titled 10 Commandments of a Music Student. And I suppose I've spoken a lot about the green flags in a teacher, and as I said, what to look for in a teacher, what makes a good teacher. Even I made an episode about the red flags in a teacher. And so I really have been focusing on the teacher, but never really about the student. And so today I am sharing sort of 5 golden rules on how to be a perfect student. And so why would this matter to you? Well, if you are a pleasant student to teach, your teacher will be more motivated to see you. They'll be more passionate about your progress. They will be more committed. And they will probably be less tired, because a lot of these rules, if you don't follow them, it can be very draining on us teachers. So basically, if you follow these rules, so there's 10 of them. Today I'm only going to talk about 5. But if you follow all these rules, you are going to have an excellent education with music, and you're going to have an excellent relationship with your teacher. And what I have found is that learning an instrument is so much about the relationship with the teacher. It's such an underrated aspect of the entire experience of learning music. So that's what I'm here for today, is just to help you nurture a really positive and respectful relationship with whoever your teacher is, because I'm 100% confident that that will improve your learning outcomes. Wow, that sounds like a lot of education buzzwords there. Okay, so rule number 1 is to be punctual to your lesson. So tutors have booked a part of their day just for you, and it is extremely likely that they have students back to back, sometimes for quite a couple of hours. And so if a student is late, then we have to rush through the lesson, or we might, because we feel bad and we want to give you your entire time, like we might sort of run, our entire schedule is running late, not due to our fault, but sort of like because you're running late. So try your best to be on time. It just shows that you respect your teacher's time. And often my experienced teachers will also be respectful of their time, in the sense that if you are running late, they're not gonna be like nice, because their time is just so precious. The more student that a teacher has, often the more strict with their time boundaries are going to be, and it's just a good habit to get into, like turning up on time. And if you find that really difficult to be on time to your lessons, you need to figure something out. Maybe you need to set an alarm when you have to leave the house, or maybe always try leaving 5 or 10 minutes like earlier than you think, so that you can be on time. Maybe you actually need to ask for a later lesson if you find yourself always being late. What one of my tutors here, he always says that early is on time and on time is late. And so just remember that. So yeah, be on time. It's just yeah, like your teacher will really appreciate if you are on time. I know that when students are late, you know, I sometimes, even without any like message or notice to let me know, I'm like, where are they? Do I have to call them? Am I going to send a video lesson? Like, I could have spent this time like teaching someone else, or things like that. So it just like puts the teacher in this very strange situation. And then, you know, we probably had some kind of lesson plan in our mind, or even like written out. Then if you rock up 15 to 20 minutes late, it's like our whole plan that we had planned, and then, you know, it goes out the window. So then we just have to very quickly adapt, and it's exhausting having to do that. So that's rule number 1, very important. Rule number 2 on how to be a good student is to clarify instructions if you're confused. So even experienced tutors, you know, might have hundreds of ways of explaining things, or demonstrating a particular movement or a skill. But the truth is that every single student learns in a slightly different way, or understands things in a different way, or perhaps their learning style is different. So if there is something that you don't understand during lessons, then there is no need to be embarrassed about it. It just means that your teacher hasn't explained it in a way that makes sense to you. And it's always better to ask as many questions as you can if you're confused about something. And things you could be confused about are what your homework is, or how to do a certain thing, or why a certain thing is the way that it is. So clarify any confusion, because obviously, like, we know what we're talking about and it makes sense to us, but we also are not mind readers. And if something doesn't make sense and you don't tell us, we might like miss that you're confused. I mean, it depends like how well we can read you. So if I say something to a student and they still have like this sort of blank face, I just sort of ask, does that make sense? And then they can say yes or no. But sometimes we might miss those cues because we're thinking about other things. So it's important to always express any confusion that you have. The other reason this is a really important thing is because it gives us feedback, like positive feedback, that one, you're paying attention to what we're saying, and number two, you're interested enough to ask follow-up questions on what we've just said. And so we actually really love it as teachers when students have that curiosity to learn and to make sure that they've understood what is being instructed. So that is rule number 2. Clarify instructions when you're confused. Okay, rule number 3 is to arrive to your lessons with all of your required materials. So that could be your music books, homework journal, pencil, metronome. I would highly recommend having a little bag, and this is what we do at Music Makers. We offer our students a tote bag when they join, and so they can just keep all of their books inside of that bag and any other tools or stationery that they need. This is just basically showing up to your lessons prepared to learn, and so we're not wasting time either looking for music or having to completely change a plan that we had decided on. So it's just very frustrating as a teacher when a student arrives and the first thing they say is, I don't have my books. Look, I would say most teachers would have a copy of the book at the studio, but that's not always the case. So you just want to be as prepared as possible, because that makes your teacher's job that much easier. The other reason this is, bringing books to your lessons is important is because it means we can build on the momentum that we've built up previously. Because then if suddenly we have to do something else because the books aren't there, it can just slow down the momentum on whatever we were working on. So if you find that maybe you're a little bit forgetful, and look, we all are, we make mistakes, and there's so many things in this day and age that we have to think about. Sometimes music is sort of the last thing we think about, but something you can do is pack your music lesson bag the day before your lesson. That way you don't have to worry about forgetting anything. So that's very important, because as I said, often teachers, we will have a plan of what we want to work on with a student before the actual lesson, and if suddenly the books are not there and all the resources we were planning on using are missing. We just have to very, very quickly adapt and think of other things to do, and that can be very challenging, and again, it just makes us more tired. Okay, so I have 2 more golden rules for how to be a perfect music student. I actually have 5 other rules, but I will share them in the next episode. So this is just a short and sweet episode. So rule number 4 is probably one that you would expect. So the student shall practice the assigned homework between lessons. Yay, practice. I mean, all teachers will expect you to practice. There's no way around it. So typically what would happen is at the end of a lesson, you would have a series of tasks or goals that your teacher would want you to work on until the next lesson. And these can be written on the music sheet, or in a homework book, or perhaps in a practice app, or in an email, or in a Google Drive document. So, or perhaps not at all, but the goals or the tasks would have been discussed face to face at the lesson. So completing these tasks, which means you do the practice at home to complete the tasks, it means you can progress to the next thing. So if you are not practicing and you're not completing the tasks, then you can't make any progress. So it becomes really like so frustrating. You have no idea how frustrating it is when we as teachers have to repeat the same thing for weeks on end because no practice is being done and the homework tasks are not being completed. And again, you know, we as teachers probably have some kind of plan for the student, but if the student's not putting in the effort, we're not going to get anywhere. So treat your music lessons like any other school subject. I'm sure if you have maths homework, you do it, or your child. If your child has maths homework, they do it. You know, that they don't go like, oh, I don't feel like it today, and you're like, okay, that's fine, you don't have to do it. Or like, I don't have time for my maths homework. Like, for school subjects, your kid doesn't get excuses for not completing it. And so you should have the same attitude and mindset towards practice. It's something that has to be done. You know, otherwise, I don't know, some kind of punishment maybe has to happen, or but the point is, there is no good enough excuse for not doing practice. Just in the same way, there is no good enough excuse for not doing school homework. So when practice is done, you will make faster progress and your teacher will love you for it. I am lucky that most of my students are really good with practice. They understand that they have to do it. And it's just nice because then we can just learn pieces for a couple of weeks. So it doesn't get boring because we're always moving along to the next thing. So there's a lot more variety in what they learn, in the activities that we do. But the only reason that is possible is because the kids are doing the practice, they're doing the homework, they are following my instructions, and that makes a big difference. So let me just recap the rules that we've had so far for how to be a perfect music student that your teacher will love you. So rule number 1 was to be on time and punctual to your lessons. Number 2, asking questions and clarifying instructions when confused. Number 3 is arriving with all of your required material. Number 4, did I say that was number 4? That was number 3. Number 4 was to doing the practice between the lessons. Oh, and actually one last point I have to say about this is make sure the practice that your child does is what was assigned by the teacher and not just like random music things that they do on their instruments. Because I've seen that before where students are like, oh yeah, I played piano this week, but they did something completely different to what I had asked of them. And so when, again, it comes back to that plan, like when we have a plan, and it's a plan maybe that we know so well, we've used it for lots of students, we know how to get from A to B, or let's just say we know that getting from A to C, we have to go through B, but we can never get through B because the student like decides to do their own thing. Well, we're never gonna get to C, if that makes sense to you. That makes sense to me. So the practice has to be what was assigned by the teacher. Then you can do other fun stuff on the side, but you have to make sure the assigned homework does get done. Okay, so that was point number 4. I have my final golden rule, and that is to not be afraid to communicate your goals. And so this is important to teachers. We enjoy getting to know our students, what matters to them, what type of music they like, and what kind of role music plays in their life. So yeah, just don't be afraid to communicate what are your goals and aspirations with music, because again, like every student is different and music means different things to different people. And so that will help us determine like how hard we push you perhaps, what opportunities we recommend to you, what repertoire we decide to teach you, and so on. So, for example, I have a student who wants to play a song at a school, East Edford. That's like her main goal for the year. So she picked the song that she wants to do, and she's been practicing it really hard the last couple of months. And I normally wouldn't teach the same song for that long, but that's what her goal is. So I'm happy to adapt what we do during the lessons to support her goal. I had another student who wanted to do a grade 5 exam. That meant we had to learn multiple songs by a certain deadline. So knowing those things about my students, what their goals are, I'm able to adapt my teaching to better support them. And so that's why it's important to not be afraid what it is you want to achieve with your music. So, are there performances you want to do? Like, when are these performances? Or maybe do you want to play music at church? And so then you would obviously look at learning worship songs. Or do you just want to join an ensemble? So you have to maybe reach a minimum level so you can join an orchestra or some kind of ensemble. There's just so many different goals you could have. Maybe music is just a hobby. In that case, we might not be too fussed about any kind of training. You just pick your own songs. So we definitely, I speak on behalf of the teachers here, but I would say most of us enjoy knowing what it is you want to achieve and why, what draws you to music. Obviously, when you decide to take lessons, there is some kind of goal you have for yourself, some kind of standard you want to meet with your playing. So communicate that to us, because then we can let you know if you are on the right track or not. And if you're not, we can also tell you why, or if you need to maybe reassess your goal, or just tweak what we do so that you can achieve it. So these are my 5, so this is the first part with the 5 rules on how to be a perfect music student. And so in next week's episode, I'm going to share the next 5 rules. Now, if you learnt music as a child, let me know how, whether or not you followed these rules. I have to say, probably something I didn't always do. Which one? Clarify instructions when confused. I didn't really do much of that because I was too shy. I rarely spoke during my lessons. Yeah, because of being shy, and I always felt that the teacher was like the authority, and if I, asked questions, it just made me look really dumb or something. And then the other thing I didn't always do either was communicating like my goals. And of course, that one was a bit strange because obviously when I learned piano, it was imposed on me. So it's not like I personally had any goals. And in the same way, when I learned harp, I didn't have any goals because I was on a scholarship. And so, I just had to learn it. Although of course it was sort of my choice, but I didn't really have any clear goals. But I do think if I was learning an instrument as an adult, I would probably have a way clearer idea of what kind of goal I would want to have, just because I know now a little bit more about the music industry and what kind of things you can do there. So anyhow, I hope this was interesting and that it sort of encourages you to think about what you bring to the teacher-student relationship. Of course, teachers can only do so much, but really the magic happens when we have a student who is just as committed as the teacher and who shows respect by arriving on time, always having the books with them, communicating well with the teacher, and of course doing the practice. So that's it for today. I look forward to seeing you next week. Thanks for tuning in to the Raising Musos podcast. To communicate with me, please send me a DM on Instagram. My handle is @musicmakersacademy. You can leave a comment on the YouTube video, or you can send me an email at hello@musicmakersacademy.com.au. All right,